Every year in September, Unity joins others in the New Thought movement to do World Day of Prayer, lovely event we had here a week or two ago. This year's affirmation was, I celebrate the vast possibilities for my life. The Unity website reminded us that we draw upon the divine power and presence to realize that limitless possibilities in our life. It was at that celebration that I was inspired to speak today about prayer. For certainly prayer opened up vast possibilities for me. If I sound a little congested, well, by golly, I am. Hoping I don't have to blow my nose in the middle, but if I do, congregation that loves and forgives. I was first drawn to Unity through articles published in the paper by Reverend Justin Epstein, and I'll insert right here, that is Planting Seeds, and if you haven't seen the most recent article from Reverend Therese, it was knockout. Beautiful, fine. And if it doesn't bring people to the church, well, that issue didn't get read that day.
That's right.
Reverend Justin Epstein, who was Unity of Hilton Head's minister at the time, in particular, he spoke of his long-term relationship with Paramahansa Yogananda, the Hindu saint whose worldwide organization, Spiritual Realization Fellowship, has centers throughout this country and elsewhere. Hinduism recognizes little s self as the self of us individuals moving through the world, and big S self as the divine or God self, if you prefer, and that's the self in self-realization. Self-realization is the goal of the practices of Yogananda, and essentially it's the process of attaining oneness with the divine. Reverend Epstein found these teachings in perfect alignment with his understanding of unity principles. Long before I was introduced to Unity, I studied Hinduism as an outgrowth of my meditation practice. Hinduism is perhaps more fractured in its sects and theological divisions than Christianity, if possible, and has many schools of thought. For me, the school of philosophy known as Advaita Vedanta, also known as non-dualism, is the center of my spiritual understanding. Essentially, Advaita Vedanta says there is not God and creation, there is only God. The universe and all of reality is in truth one unified field, just as quantum physics suggests, and we are all one within it. Glimmers of this understanding go back to our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. Although it has only become the thrust of Unity movement in the past few decades, especially through the work of Unity author and minister Eric Butterworth, and more recently in the work of Reverend Linda Martella-Whitsett, who's head of Silent Unity. Oh, and by the way, keynote speaker this coming week at Canuga, Unity Ministers of the Mid-Atlantic States. I'll be there. You be there or you be square, right? And that of Dr. Paul Hasselbeck, who was for many years the Dean of Unity's SEE, or Spiritual Education and Enrichment School, which provides the theological training for both licensed Unity teachers and ministers. His text, Heart-Centered Metaphysics, is the reference for the 4 required courses on metaphysics. When I came to Unity, I was not a praying man. At this point in time, I'd had a meditation practice for over 30 years, and I'd often heard that meditation was listening to God while prayer was talking to God, and I really didn't have much to say. This changed one day in a conversation with Theda Parks, who served many years as prayer chaplain leader, in which she noted that gratitude was a form of prayer. That insight was the beginning of my path to becoming a prayer chaplain. I'd never been interested in prayers of petition. Perhaps I wasn't raised that way. And experience had taught me that most of my so-called trials and tribulations were in reality growth-promoting experiences. It seemed more prudent to figure out the lessons I had created for myself than to pray that they be removed from me. And as for asking for things that I wanted, sheepishly I'll admit that most of what I had fervently desired and didn't get turned out to be situations or relationships which would not have served me well, if you get what I mean. In 2012, while I was serving on Unity of Hilton Head's board, I decided to become a licensed Unity teacher. And the very first course I had an opportunity to take was a class on prayer based on Reverend Linda's book, How to Pray Without Talking to God. What an eye-opener. In September 2013, I had the opportunity to become a prayer chaplain, and I took it. By the way, did I mention I'm chaplain on duty today, and I'd be happy to pray with you after? There are many types of prayer, and perhaps the most common form of all is the prayer of petition, which can take the form of anything from a prayer for a better job, the healing of a relative, or to praying for world peace. All prayers of petition attempt to catch the attention of the Creator with the hope that they will intervene on our behalf and grant our wishes. Unity's emphasis on affirmative prayer is based on our understanding that God is an indwelling presence and that prayer is a deep internal dialogue that affirms the realities that we wish to see manifest in the world around us. Almost everyone who comes to Unity came from another tradition. We have a couple of exceptions to that. Lifelong Unity folks here, Pat, Mary Lou. Most often from a Christian tradition, which had become too narrow and constrictive for their consciousness. Certainly, Unity's lack of dogma and its overall acceptance of the human condition attracts a lot of people. At some point in everyone's involvement with Unity, they are made aware that among the chief differences between Unity and other Christian prayer practice is the notion of affirmative prayer. And from my experience, it seems to be the one of the most difficult concepts for people to become comfortable with. It is difficult in large measure for the reasons our co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote. We have been so persistently taught that prayer consists in asking God for some human need and that what is offered most often are prayers of petition, whether they're asked humbly or in the spirit of bargaining. If only you'll do this for me, I'll be ever so good, I promise. In How to Pray Without Talking to God, Reverend Linda speaks very plainly about the need to no longer see God as a stern, disapproving parent, or as a kind of Santa Claus who can deliver gift-wrapped wishes to good boys and girls. And under the heading of Evolve Your God, she writes, sooner or later, every child must grow up. Everyone must become self-sufficient. Those who do not mature live out their lives handicapped by dependency. Sooner or later, I believe, everyone must evolve in spiritual understanding and claim divine self-sufficiency. All spiritual masters have done so, even as they credit the one power that is inclusive of their humanity as well as greater than it. Those who do not mature spiritually feel powerless and dependent upon a divine parent they must plead with and please. Butterworth wrote, we can get away from the thought of God somewhere and think of God as present, active within us, expressing himself as us. We must let go of the tendency to pray to God, to reach for God, to supplicate help from God, and to get to the realization that God exists as the allness in which I exist and you exist as an eachness. Affirmative prayer is empowering prayer. It begins with the recognition of an all all-pervading, universal power that many call God. And in prayer, we shift our attention from human circumstances and focus on our spiritual nature, our oneness with the infinite. From this state of awareness, we know the truth beyond our circumstances. We realize our capacity to think and act accordingly. In affirmative prayer, we do not focus on the problem. Rather, we call upon those divine aspects of ourselves which, when realized, dissolve the issue. In unity, prayer intentions are generally expressed as affirmations, a positive statement of truth. By the use of affirmations, we claim and appropriate that which is ours in truth. Now, this contrasts with the idea of denials, which is the mental process of erasing from consciousness the false beliefs that we hold. Denial clears away belief in evil as reality, and thus makes room for the establishing of truth. A denial is a relinquishment, and it should be done gently and with ease, as if we were sweeping away cobwebs. Reverend Linda tells us, spiritual denial is a prayer practice that snaps us out of the trances of permanence. In contrast, let us make our affirmations in a strong, bold, positive attitude of mind after having properly prepared ourselves. In her book, Reverend Linda explains that affirmative prayer does the following. It cultivates our awareness of oneness, the one power and presence, and divine mind. We pray from a consciousness of God. It identifies divine nature as our true nature. We claim our divinity. And it reveals the highest truth we can comprehend in this moment. We realize that truth. So let's outline the Unity 5-step process of affirmative prayer. 1. Relaxation. Breathe deeply and focus within. Release all concerns and random thoughts. 2. Concentration. Recognize the power of God as life, love, wisdom, and ever-present good. 3. Meditation. My favorite part. In silent reflection, see that the power of God is the same power within you, your divine potential. The silence is not going somewhere, it's not reaching something, it's not even reaching for something, it's giving up the very desire to reach. This requires a great change in consciousness because most of us are doers. I want to get it done. I want to meditate. I want to use the right technique, and I want to get there now. 4. Realization. Know that you have the power to be, to do, to have, and to allow the good you desire. This is the point in which we engage our power of imagination, envisioning what it is we want to see manifest in the world. It's also the point in which we speak the word. I love that old phrase from Unity and elsewhere. Or state our affirmations and denials. And here we might get a better understanding of the importance of the meditation phase of our prayer, because for our prayers to be effective, we must not pray to God, rather, we must pray from the consciousness of God. Reverend Linda adds, spiritual realization is the fruit of prayer. As a phase of prayer, realization follows relaxation, concentration, and meditation, because these earlier phases prepare you Focus your attention and center you in truth. Realization occurs when truth becomes real to you, no longer theoretical. You get it. Whereas before you believed it, now you know it. 5, appreciation. Appreciation has a special significance in affirmative prayer practice. Our early teachers, Myrtle Fillmore and Emily Cady, both emphasized that we must see our prayers as already granted, knowing that they will unfold in time. We're reminded of this in Isaiah 65:24, where we are told, "Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear." I've titled this message, Prayer is a Spiritual Practice, because I want to share my vision with you that prayer is not just a tool or technique we apply to specific problems as they arise. Rather, when it becomes a continual practice, we achieve a state wherein we are always prepared for whatever arises in our life. And we find that circumstances have no longer the power to move us off center or to disturb our inner tranquility. This is the meaning of Reverend Teresa's continual admonition that we need to stay prayed up. Reverend Linda opens her book, Divine Audacity, with this quote from our Master Teacher Jesus from Matthew 5:14. "You are the light of the world." She makes very clear that our purpose in life is to become the light of the world by realizing our divine identities. She sees a solid prayer practice as the way to achieve this goal. In her teachings, Reverend Linda testifies that unity is the truth of our being, and that the key purpose of prayer is the realization of that truth. In this book, she writes about her use of the 12 powers as essential components of her daily prayer practice. Charles Fillmore developed our foundational understanding in unity of the 12 powers, and the main idea is that there are essentially 12 divine ideas that make up the spiritual mind of man, and that through meditation and prayer, we may come to realize these powers as the truth of our being and manifest them in our daily lives. The 12 powers are so central to unity that they have been explored time and again in new books by different unity authors, including, more recently, Dr. Hasselback's Power Up, the 12 Powers Revisited as Accelerated Abilities. In Divine Audacity, Reverend Linda continues her work on prayer by focusing on these divine ideas as the keys to affirmative prayer. I describe God according to 12 recognizable attributes, lights, or powers that are our capacities by virtue of our oneness with God. Cultivating these capacities, we spiritualize our lives in fulfillment of our divine purpose to be the light of the world. It is her understanding that divine nature expresses as powers or capacities intrinsic to our true nature, and that whatever is true of divine nature must be claimed and expressed by us intentionally. She states that our greatest potential is to become the light of the world, revealing our divine nature wherever we are, bringing light to the people and circumstances we find ourselves among. Remember, Scripture informs us of our divine identity in John 10:34, where Jesus said, "Is it not written in your law, I said, you are God's?" I began this talk referring to our most recent World Day of Prayer. Perhaps you noticed that we did not pray for world peace, or any other changes in our outer world for that matter, as important as those issues are. Each of these concerns are fine opportunities for denials and affirmations, but beyond that, we believe that, for instance, that it's far better to be peace in the world than to ask for it in a prayer of petition. I've been an activist all my life, and I do believe that there are circumstances in the world which need changing, as well as adjustments and understanding that need to be arrived at in order for this to be the heaven on earth that we know it can be. It's my heartfelt belief that a life of prayer will align us with our own unique purpose, our eachness in the scheme of allness. Once we know what is ours to do, we can call upon our spiritual powers to accomplish our unique tasks and thereby contribute in the ways in which each of us may be most effective. In the spirit of that, I'll share that my favorite song that we sing here on Sundays, and I requested it, Blessing to the World by Karen Drucker, in which we sing, "We are the heart, we are the hands, we are the voice of spirit on earth, and who we are, and all we do is a blessing to the world." For truly we are the hands and fingers of God on earth, and we must be the change we want to see, as Gandhi announced. Therefore, I will suggest to you that our spiritual work is to realize the strengths, talents, and insights necessary to become the light of the world, and that a life of prayer is a spiritual practice that will guide us there. I pray with you in closing that we uphold one another's divine identity and spiritual capacities, that we remain confident that as we realize truth, we will breathe truth into these prayer intentions and witness their manifestation in the world. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. It's my privilege now to do the meditation. And in light of that, I just say again, reiterate the importance of silence, or as Butterworth, the meditation, or as Butterworth and others of us like to refer to as the silence. Silence isn't nearly so loaded as meditation. It seems easier to achieve. And I tell you that sincerely, from a meditation practice of 40 years, those moments in the silence are the richest and most nourishing of my life. And so as you sit there and relax and place your feet on the floor, settle into your chair, forget about what I said, slip slowly into that space